In this video, we're going to look at the relationship between fractions and decimals. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to convert between fractions to decimals. And then what we'll do is we will look at how to go from decimals. We'll look at the the terminating decimals. And we're going to look at how we can take those to fractions. And then finally, we'll look at mixed numbers and how to go to fractions with those. So let's go ahead and get started with an example. So let's look at fractions to decimals. So let's say that we have the fraction of 3/4. Now all this is saying is that we have a part of something that is split into 4 equal parts. And so what we can do, this fraction bar is actually just saying division. So it says this is saying the same as 3 divided by 4, which now when we actually go to divide that, it may look a little bit backwards, but it says 3 divided by 4. So now we ask ourselves, okay, how many times does 4 go into 3? Well, it doesn't. That's our issue. Okay, so now we say, okay, how many times does 4 go into 30? And we can think through it. Maybe we need to do some work over on the side here, and we say, okay, 4 times 6 is, well, that's 24. Let's try 4 times 7 is 28, and then we say, okay, 4 times 8 is, that's 32, so that's too high. So the most it can go in is 7 times. Now notice that I have my decimal, it just pops straight up, right? So now I have 7 times 4, which is 28, and I subtract, and so I have 2 left, and I drop down the 0. And I say, okay, how many times does 4 go into 20? Well, it has to be less than 7, because I was 28. So if we go down 4 more, that's 24. If we go down 1 more, so 5 times, 4 times 5, we get 20. And so then we take 5 times 4 is 20, and when we subtract those, we get 0. So then we can see that 3/4 is equivalent to 75 hundredths, or 0.75, and that is exact. There isn't any extra left over. It is what we call a terminating decimal, because it ends, kind of like the Terminator. He ended people's lives. Terminating decimals end. Okay, let's take a look at another one here. Let's take a look at 2/3. Again, we have something, a pie or whatever, broken up into 3 parts, and we have 2 of those 3 parts. So again, this says 2 divided by 3, which is the same as saying 2 divided by 3. Okay, so how many times does 3 go into 2? Well, it doesn't. And then we put our decimal place straight up. How many times does 3 go into 20? 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 6 is 18, 3 times 7 is 21. Okay, so not quite 7 times. So the most we can do is 16. So 6 times 3 is 18. When we subtract, we get 2. Drop this down. How many times does 3 go into 20? Well, we just did that, right, at 6. And what you start to notice is that we get this infinite pattern of 6s. Maybe we should go one more, right? 18, 2, 0, drop that down. Okay, and so we get that 2/3 is equal to this thing that's 0.6666, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And so how we can represent that is we use this repeating bar. It has a fancy name. It's called a vinculum. It's kind of worthless information, but I think it's fun. And so it's just this repeating bar saying that this digit here, this 6, will continue to repeat on and on forever. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look now. We're going to jump on to the next category of going from decimals to fractions. So let's say that we have the decimal of 120. 125 thousandths. So if we want to write it as a fraction, we write it like we say it. So this number is 125. And then we say, okay, this is the tenths place, the hundredths place, the thousandths place. So this is the thousandths place. And so we take 125 and we divide it by the place value that our number ends in. So it's 125 thousandths. Well, now what we can do is we can take and simplify this down. So I know that 25 can go into 125, and I know that 25 can go into 1,000. So let's go ahead and divide by 25 on both of these. When we reduce it down, we have to reduce by the same amount. So 25 I know goes into 104 times. So I think it'll go into 125 5 times. And if we know that 25 goes into 100 4 times, then 25 should go into 1,000 4d times. Okay, we look and we see we have 5/40ths, which can still be reduced by 5. So we'll take a look there. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 40 divided by 5 is 8. So we see that 125 thousandths is equivalent to 1/8. Now let's take a look at one other example here. Let's do negative 1.7. Okay, so we say this is negative 1 and 7/10. And actually we can't do anything more with that, so we just need to leave it as that. Finally, what we're going to do is we are going to look at going from mixed numbers to fractions. And this is one of those skills that is useful, and there's a shortcut that we can do, but I'll show you the long way first and then I'll show you your shortcut. So let's say that we have the number 2 and 1/3. So what this is, it says 2 and 1/3. It's basically saying 2 plus 1/3. And so what we can do then is, let's get a common denominator and just add these together. So if we write 2, we can write 2 as a fraction of 2 over 1. So let's get a common denominator. Since we are looking for a common denominator between 3 and 1, the common denominator would be 3. Okay, the first one, or the second one, is already in thirds. And in order to get 2 over 1 into thirds, we just take and we multiply the bottom by 3. If you do it to the bottom, you have to do it to the top. So we're just scaling it up by a factor of 3. And so we get 6/3 plus 1/3. And then we can add our numerators and leave our denominator. So our denominator stays 3. 6 plus 1 is 7. Now you may have heard people talk about the shortcut when it comes to this. And so what we can do is, here's our shortcut. We are basically saying that 3 times 2, we're finding out the value of this in terms of thirds is 6. And then we add what's here in the fraction. So it would look like 2 times 3, or 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, divided by whatever your denominator is here in the fraction. So that's the shortcut. Let's take a quick look at another one really quickly. Let's say we have 9 halves. We'll go the other way, okay? If we have 9 halves, we can look and say, okay, 2 can go into 9 how many times? Well, 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. So it can go in 4 times. And we see then if we take away 8 from 9, we have 1 left over. So we have 1/2. If you want to do it the old-fashioned way, you can come over here and say, well, 9 divided by 2, and we can say 2 goes into 9 4 times, and we actually could leave this out and say we have a remainder of 1 when we take this, and so it would be 4 with the remainder over what you are dividing by. So we can say that 9 halves is equivalent to 4 and 1/2. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions, you can always post them. And if this was helpful, go ahead and like the video. Thank you for watching.